Yeah, so I'm freaking excited. I'm so glad this time worked out for you. And this actually, I was just like, oh, watching your footage of the great sword. And I know we'll talk about this actually like officially in the show when we kick off here just in a second, kind of letting the YouTube thing catch up. But oh my gosh, dude, I'm so excited that you were also doing PvP in heavy armor and it wasn't
Yeah.
completely just atrocious. So they didn't talk about that in their I don't know what to call them, dev updates, live letters, like
Yeah, bit of a chat, wasn't it? Like a dev chat, maybe.
dev chat, little.
Yeah, they didn't touch on it, to be honest. And I've been sort of dubbing it Dex World lately, because if you're not playing Dex, it's actually quite tough to sort of survive. So if you're not light and Dex or light and in, it's a tough world. It's tough. So yeah, for me actually running around in heavy, I think I was 200 con, around about 250 strength, because I didn't have no food or anything.
You didn't do any Dex on that, because the greatsword is Dex strength. Is it Dex primary, strength secondary?
So it scales evenly from strength and Dex, which is really interesting. I don't think they've done that before. So yeah, even across the board. I think I can't remember the top of my head. I think I just shoved it all in strength, put some con on, and then off we go. And yeah, it felt really nice and felt really fun actually, and felt like, heavy's it's not over, man. We might make it back,
I hope so. Like they tease some of that, and I guess we'll save all this for the show, because it's like there's so many little things. And I thought your video kind of asked a couple of really interesting questions. I think it's interesting to kind of see the response from the community as well. I don't know how much you've seen, so we'll talk about that as well. See here. Fat J says, can you ask if the devs are really open for ideas, or if they're more quote unquote we know better? So I think that's a really good question. We'll save that for the show, Fat J. So thank you so much. If you guys have those kind of questions, just you sound off and I can throw them up on screen and we can talk about them. Also, I like your little Destiny icon there. That's pretty cool with the glaives. Yeah. So some cool stuff, guys. If you are new around here, we're going to be talking roughly about an hour. Sound off in chat, and sometimes the conversation gets directed that way. These also are in MP3 audio form that you guys can subscribe to Epic Radio wherever podcasts are found. But two of the links are in the description of these videos. Please go subscribe to Danneh as well. He's tagged in this. So if you go follow him on Twitch or on YouTube, he's a member of the Studio Loot team. Oh my gosh! Like I'm just like it is common.
That's a better name for it, man. Studio Loot.
Studio Loot, baby. We're rebranding them here on this show. They don't even know it yet. I've already changed their domain name, and so be sure to check him out. I think we have so many really great content creators in the community, and so hopefully we'll also shout out some more creators, because you were with Baggins. So there's there's just a wide range of people who are just like, yeah, there's something magical about this game. So it's really exciting to see. So all right, you ready to kick this thing off?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's go.
Here we go. Oh, I didn't click the button. I was like, wait, what? It's not doing anything. What's happening? All right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Epic Loot Radio. My name is Brian, and sitting down and joining me today is Danneh, and we're going to be talking about his experience with the Greatsword, his experience with Brimstone Sands, his hope for the future of New World. And it's going to be an exciting conversation. If you're joining us live, be sure to sound off in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe for more of these chats. We've been doing these kind of weekly one-on-ones, talking about all things video games. And today I'm thrilled to have you back on the podcast to talk about the future of New World. Now, let's start with the most clickbaity, the most sensationalized question that you asked actually at the end of your videos. Is the Brimstone Sands update going to save New World?
Yeah, I mean, it is, isn't it? It's like it's one of these questions that I feel a lot of people want answered, but in some way, it doesn't really need answering. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So one thing I did say was I actually don't think it needs saving, sort of quote unquote saving. I actually had someone in chat today mention, what they need to do to get the game back up to 1 million players, and I sort of said to myself, it doesn't need to go. to 1 million players. Like that was
Why
the
a
pinnacle.
million? Right.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I think, you know, it was like, oh my God, the game's dead because it's not 1 million players sort of comment. And I was like, oh, this guy, man, get out of here. But, you know, people do want to see the game come back up. They want to see more concurrent players. And I think people reference concurrent players to success. And I think you're sort of a pioneer behind that. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that.
Well, it never has. It's, in my perspective, it's always been a substitute for trust.
Yeah.
That's how I've always viewed it, because the thing about an MMO, you know, in game as a service, like your time invested is paid off in some way, shape, or form. Everybody's going to have that different kind of test. But when it comes to a new MMO from an unproven studio without a franchise behind New World, New World's a fresh IP, right? So we don't see this happen at all, right? Like WildStar, last opportunity, last call. Ashes of Creation still isn't out. We can talk about that, you know, later if we need. But it's a substitute for the trust that you have in it. And so concurrency is like, is this game going to go on? Oh, the numbers are, or this, that means it's going to shut down, which is a massive assumption. And I like to disprove that assumption with mathematics. People, you know, say I work for Amazon. No one's paid me yet. I have, like I have yet to receive this mythical Amazon money. I don't even own stock in Amazon. So I'm the idiot here. But anyhow, on that note, though, like, why do you feel like it is a lack of trust, or do you feel like there's something else in terms of what people are using as that, especially that million concurrent? Could it hit it? Yeah, maybe, but like I don't think it needs to. I'm gonna let you handle it.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the extreme end of it. And this guy, I think, you know, maybe is a little bit on cloud nine, but people do genuinely, I think it's, you know, regardless of kind of what we say, I think they do see concurrent to some sort of success rate, and it's definitely not the case. But, you know, I think when we look back at older games like I don't know, Counter-Strike, PUBG, still not exactly old, they're still rocketing, they're still doing well in numbers. But when people see concurrent, they see, okay, there's a lot of players in the game, which means the game should in theory be making money. So the more people that are playing it, the more money it can be made, and the more money that's made, the more time can go into development. I think that's kind of how they link it together. And if only 2,000 people are playing it concurrently, like, is that enough money for a studio to keep developing? And I think that they tie these together. I think if I was going to do it, then that's how I would tie it together, sort of based on income and development and things. And I actually asked, I mean, you might be asking, but I actually asked David about this. You know, are you essentially earning money as a company? And you know, I asked that question to them. So I think concurrent is kind of around that. But yeah, back to the question, I don't think it needs saving. I think they're very happy with how launch went, very happy with how sort of the hype was, and that's given them time to continue developing the game for the next good period of time. I'm about to say a day, but a good period of time. So yeah, it doesn't need saving yet. It's still doing very well for what, and it seems to be they're very happy with where it is right now.
Oh, they're incredibly happy. And here's something that's interesting. You want to know my theory? And I get that there's a growing community that roots for me to be wrong about things. And I'm not trying to be, you know, oh, I'm always right. I'm not trying to be like a jerk about what I'm about to say. I see things very differently. And it's just because of the world that I live in and the experience I have. Do you want to hear my theory about what they're building?
Yes.
Okay. So a little bit of context. Why the hell is Amazon investing in MMORPGs? Nobody can answer this question except for Amazon, right? Like they know what they're doing, or at least they have an idea of what they're trying to do. But when I ask that question to anybody, everybody's just like, MMOs are so risky. But then you see Amazon launching New World. You see them publishing Lost Ark. You see them already building another MMO. Even in theory, there could be 2 MMOs internal to them. We don't know. We know that there's another one that they're building native. Rumors of them coming in to publish Throne of Liberty, picking up any other MMO out there. And then ultimately, you know, I even speculate that depending on where the state Lost Ark is in, that they might try to pick up and publish that game as well, just to continue to have this pedigree of the MMORPG. And in my mind, like if you were asking me, I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but you're like, hey Brian, where should I put my money? It's like, I wouldn't invest in MMOs. Well, there's something that really kind of dawned on me recently. And it comes down to Prime Gaming. Prime Gaming is this really interesting service. And I don't know if one of two things could be true. They're either trying to and going to increase the overall cost of Amazon Prime and include more of this Prime Gaming features within that as a service, or they're going to look to try and make Prime Gaming its own standalone service. And one of the things that I think you do with that is you actually offer a wide selection of games as a service, meaning I don't think we're going to see a single MMO that survives solely off of subscriptions, and New World does not have a subscription. But imagine saying, hey, you get your free Prime sub, you get all this extra stuff, you get your battle passes or whatever in New World and this and that. All of a sudden, they're going to make that a very tempting offering as a standalone product, right? So that's my theory. My theory is that they're building out a massive amount of trying to build out a value so that they can take their service, which is bundled as a part of Prime, Amazon Prime, and make it and see if they can make it stand up on its own.
That's some big brain thinking, man. That is some big. And you know
I'm
what?
saying that publicly so that I can call back to this in the future when it comes true, because it's like, gosh, I know, like, people are like, gosh, I hope Brian's wrong, but Brian called 14 right, like, I'll at the end of the day, like, there will be the video of, like, I don't know how to title it, but I was like, told you, like, when it comes to New World, like, I get that there's an emotional view that people take when it comes to MMOs, and I just factor out all the feelings and I just look at data, and that's where I kind of come to my crazy conclusions that are antithetical and against internet popular opinion. But that's just not, I can't, like, they called me an idiot for believing that 14 could be reborn, and you know what, here I stand proud of the fact that I said that no, we're good.
It makes absolute sense, especially with the sort of rumors that they were talking about EA. There was something that happened about EA. I'm currently very, lucky to be sponsored by this Amazon Gaming Week that's happening right now. And if you're looking,
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, well, if you look into that, it's everything gaming. So it's not just games themselves. They're tying that into Amazon.com, where they have all these deals on computers, consoles, peripherals, games themselves. And when you start to think about, okay, they have literally everything a gamer wants. People spend a lot of money on gaming. If they can then offer something like an Xbox Game Pass within Amazon Prime, they are winning.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Like, EA is an interesting thing. Now, EA doesn't own the license to FIFA anymore. Like, there's some value that's driven in EA that I think is inflated by some of these exclusive licensed properties, not owned, but EA does own a lot of decent properties. And when you start to think about it, imagine them taking Mass Effect and turning that into an MMO. Imagine them trying to, like, if they wanted to reboot Anthem, I think games as a service, just like we're seeing Sony lean deeply into games as a service, I think that's going to be one of the driving factors behind why do you want to get in on this subscription model. And it's the games that continue to provide value. And then it doesn't matter if you're playing New World today and then you go off to play the Lost Ark tomorrow, and then Throne of Liberty the next day, and by the way, it's been a year now, you're coming back to check out all the stuff that's changed in New World. Like, that's the loop that they actually care about. Are you in our ecosystem or are you not? And if we can keep you in this ecosystem, I don't, like, it doesn't matter. And the fact is, and I see Chad actually pointing it out, let's see here, they own the servers. Like, that is some of the most powerful things in mind, because when it comes down to cost, it's like Amazon's just printing money, and they're like, all right, well, you can have some servers. It's not a problem. Like, it doesn't cost us, it's not costing us anything. We're just not charging, we're just internalizing that as an expense and writing it off on our taxes so we don't pay taxes. But you'll be paying taxes in New World for sure. For sure.
It's a great discussion. Just I guess maybe last thing from I'm looking here on this page in the Gaming Week, and it has everything from music to the peripherals to the consoles themselves to the games, and then obviously selling other people's games on their platform. So like you said, it's kind of like an Apple ecosystem where everything is built within that, and you live within Amazon, and that's all. That on one side of the coin is extremely scary. On the flip side, it's genius by them if everything can be done within one place.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting for sure. Now I want to bring back up this comment that we got from Fat J saying, "Do the devs really care for our ideas? Are they really open to our ideas, or did you get a vibe that they know better for, kind of like that thing you think you do but you don't vibe? What kind of vibe have you gotten from the devs?"
Early on, it was a we know better vibe. I think that I kind of said this before. I think Amazon is a big studio, and I think that for you to progress as a developer potentially within the studio, you have to come up with ideas and you have to be, create something successful. So taking what we know as a dungeon and renaming it an expedition, I think is someone's idea of making this new and fresh, and like, hey, I did this, and hey, I did that. Same with the orbs, the keys and stuff. But they have listened. We didn't like the orbs. They've changed it. I sat there the other day and spoke to David around PvP missions. Now I got a chance to ask David about PvP missions through one of their dev update videos, and I said quite honestly, I think they're trash. And fair enough, they never asked me again for my opinion on there. They said, don't ask me any more questions. But I sat there with him the other week when I got invited to London, and we spoke about it. And, they actually kind of agree that the PvP missions are not where they need to be, and they're re-looking at things. So I think that they implement their ideas first because, that's the way it works. And then when they realize that it doesn't work, some things are really good that they've done, but other things are not. And they are genuinely listening. They are genuinely changing things based off what we as a community suggest. So it's a bit of a mix, I'd say, but they definitely are open for ideas for sure.
Yeah, I get that feeling as well. Like a couple ideas that I've had, especially as it relates to PvP. Remember when they basically the incentive was to go all to one zone? I can't even remember Great Cleave. Yeah. And do the PvP missions, and it ended up being this kind of thing. I would really love to see them basically take like a weekly rotator and pick 1 or 2 zones and say, hey, crazy open world PvP bonuses and all kinds of stuff. You're going to do all this. And I think maybe leaderboards will help out a little bit, in that regards, being able to track more information. But I would love to see something, because just like with the depths, or I don't know why I said the depths, just like with the mutators and how they rotate each week. Yeah. Just like pick a zone, pick 2 zones and make that a hotbed of crazy PvP action, so that if you're looking for that open world PvP, like this is the zone this week that you want to go jump in on, and it's going to be crazy and there's going to be rewards, and you'll just get rewards for standing in there flagged. I don't care, like whatever they would have to do. And I think that would drive people into that, because who knows what zone each week is coming up, and then that gives you a whole different, that whole different vibe. What do you think about that? Is that something that you would be interested in?
I was going to say we actually spoke about that. I spoke to David, the dev, and I said, "Look, do you remember Great Cleave and how awesome it was?" And he was like, "Yeah, we were watching it. It was amazing. The sort of concentration of players in one particular area was absolutely mad and really, really fun. Obviously, that wasn't the plan for them, because people are obviously using it to kind of skip PvP, the PvP reward track. They were using it to kind of boost it, and that wasn't the idea, so they changed it. But they did confirm that they loved seeing that. They loved seeing the community kind of come to a particular place and essentially fight. And it seemed to be across the board like a really positive thing. People really enjoyed, the fighting, and it was a good positive thing. So yeah, I would absolutely love to see it. I would like to see it become a thing that's kind of tied into the game. So something like a caravan system. So when you're upgrading the town or upgrading your fort, the materials get sort of taken from the town to the fort, and en route you have to be flagged to defend it or attack it, and things like that. I think that could be really cool. That's tied into the world. I don't know what they will or what they won't do, but I would love to see things like that. So your idea works absolutely perfectly. Particular places with concentrated amounts of players to create some sort of PvEVP scenario would be phenomenal. Would be really cool to come to the game. Yeah. Imagine
some kind of crazy capture the flag thing. It's like, hey guys, all right, if you can get this, your faction's gonna, I don't know. Like there's so much potential for this game. It's exciting just because it feels like we're just sitting on this epic amount of potential, and it just kind of that does require a little bit of patience. That does require a little bit of, you know, in a way of forgiveness to sit down and say like, yeah, like it's fun. There's problems. Everybody who's playing it knows, like, yeah, there's some things you're gonna get frustrated by. Is there any, like, if you were going to put like a top 3 list of the current biggest 3 frustrations you have with the game right now, what would those be?
Oh man, that's a put me on the spot moment. Probably as I'm playing on the daily, the biggest thing that annoys me is the equip load statuses. So heavy versus medium versus light. I think we all know at the moment light is the best way to mitigate damage rather than being heavy. So looking at the equip load would be really important for me. The next big thing would be territory control, but not necessarily the control of territory, but how you get into control of territory. So the main thing being open world PvP before the wars. So obviously the PvP missions, essentially, that needs to be looked at. That was probably the top 2, really. I don't know if I can think of any more. Maybe just obviously the general desync from time to time, just the performance is a bit meh. But yeah, I think those are really important for me, that they look at relatively quickly, because it's quite a big part of the game as well.
Now, before we talk more about the Great Sword and just the new zone itself and your experience within that, because I got a lot of interesting questions, at least from my perspective. Yeah. Have they given any more hints or updates regarding like loadouts in terms of like being able to build? Because we got the group finder now, and they talked about future updates for that. And within the group finder, you assign a role, and I'm just like, my goodness, like I would love to be able to take any of this gear and just bundle it into like, here's this loadout, here's this loadout. Did they give any hints or any discussion about that while you're working with the devs?
Kind of, yeah. Kind of. There was definitely an off the record type discussion, and one of the big questions we asked, I think we sort of, me and Baggers, we kind of put them in a position where we said, right, I think it was swimming, mounts, loadouts. Like
those are the 3 biggest comments that I get every.
What's happening? Yeah, what's happening with these
things? Have
they
added swimming yet? Have they added mounts yet? Have they added loadouts yet? Like those are, in a way, like probably the 3 biggest kind of pain points that I think players who've fallen away, you know, are looking to see if they want to return.
People are talking about that, yeah. So there wasn't confirmation, but there was the discussion kind of went along the lines of one of these 3 should probably be coming in the, you know, in the near future, let's say, but no confirmation of anything. There's no black and white, like this is what it's going to be, but it was something along these lines is going to come soon. And the only thing that I think makes really the most sense in the game at the moment is gear sets. You know, inventory storage and inventory management is a pain. Even if you are extremely organized, it's still a pain in the butt. So I think inventory sort of gear sets or loadouts, however you want to call them, I think they're coming soon. Like I
hope that's the kind of the surprise thing that we get, because I felt like with the musical instruments of the summer update, that was kind of like surprise, and I really like that surprise. And if they did that, if they pulled a loadout surprise with this like fall update, I think that would actually serve a lot, because then essentially the question pivots to this, is that one of the things, the way I answered your question in your video when I was kind of like going through all the information yesterday was, I think the thing that in terms of player retention is going to come down to what happens next. The fall update is the last part of the public roadmap that we've been given. Yep. And I'm hoping that they'll sit down and kind of either give us a brand new roadmap for year 2. But I'd like to see, because when it comes down to trust, I'd love to see some kind of, you know, even if it's ethereal, like here's our plan for year 2. We know we have that pretty solid, what we can expect. And then here's what we would like to get, you know, maybe in year 3. And like that way, if there's like, let's say mounts or let's say swimming, they're like, well, swimming and mounts aren't in year 2. Let's just be upfront about that. So expectations aren't, oh, maybe it's going to be this spring or something like that. But then essentially it's like, okay, we would like to do something of that, and we're still working on it. And we're still kind of drafting it. Maybe that's year 3 or maybe that's year 4. I think if you're communicative about it, when people ask about, hey, when's swimming or hey, when's this? Well, you know, that gives us as content creators the ability to kind of like point to the roadmap and be like, well, this is what they're thinking, as opposed to like, well, we don't know, you know, like, do we really need it? Like, well, clearly someone's asking about it. they want to know. And if the answer is going to be no, at least for the next couple of years, like let the answer be no. That's my view on it. Do you expect them to kind of sit down with everybody like sometime after the Brimstone Sands and detail out a new, couple of, new year of content for the game?
Yeah, there is a new roadmap.
Have you
on the
seen
horizon? It? No, I haven't seen it. I've really tried, man. I really tried to get some more juicy information. I was like, yes, kidnap him. Tell me. But no, they did confirm that a new roadmap's coming. He did confirm that Scott has a big announcement at some point soon as well, which I think they actually kind of said on the dev video as well. But he confirmed that in our event too, and yeah. It sounds very exciting, to be honest.
I think they need to make that sometime in September around the 1 year anniversary, because then you can say, hey, in October, this is all getting added. And then, by the way, whether that ends up being a paid expansion or just or no paid expansions, and they're just going to be like, hey, we're going to keep updating it. And every quarter, you can expect really cool and big fun things from us. I don't know what play they're going to go with, but I think, and also I want to hear kind of a conversation about monetization. Did they any conversation about battle passes? Because I know that was a part of their part of their their thing that they were kind of talking about, and a lot of people were like, oh, this game's gonna be pay to win. And then it's so funny because I've seen so many people be like, I'll never play a pay to win game, and then they're like, I'm all about Diablo Immortal, I'm all about Lost Ark. Let's all just be hypocrites together, right? Shall we?
Yeah.
Any conversations about like a battle pass or future monetization plans?
Not specifically around that, but kind of as I mentioned earlier, when I got a chance to sit down with him and ask him the question, I said to him, does New World make enough money to keep being developed? And the answer basically was, we're going to keep developing the game. So he didn't show me how much money they're making, of course, but it sounded like they made enough money from launch to at least fund a couple of years more of development. And I think going along with what you said earlier, they would like to see New World become a success. They're going to keep grinding and they keep pushing the development on this, because if New World's a success, it goes very well with all these other MMOs they're trying to get their hands on or publish and things like that. And if New World fails, that's going to look really bad for the rest of them. So
it becomes a very hard thing to do, because I think that breaks trust. When people are like, I'm not going to trust them yet, I don't blame them. They've been burned by other companies. In my mind, it's like, well, I'm going to trust that they believe what they say they're going to do. And then if they decide to like pack up shop and like quit, then any other thing that they do, I'm like, I don't know. Like, you've already proven that you're not going to stick it out through the hard times, because essentially I think the MMO is the story of kind of the first 3 years are like the hardest point, because you're building out your community, you're building out trust, you're building out communication, and I think they're doing the real work. They're putting out updates, to us once a month. They're, honestly, I think doing a really good job at that. I feel very communicated. I feel very heard, and that's important in order for my investment into the game. Now, let's talk about Brimstone. Let's talk about the Greatsword. Let's talk about ultimate abilities. We'll start with ultimates. That was the most surprising.
Yeah.
And so you got to play around with them. They're driven from the Hearthstone, which is a part of the level 60, MSQ. Do those unlock at 60? Is that when you get your ultimate ability?
So what kind of happened was we essentially went to this event. We kind of went down into the cellar of this London building, and I was like, oh my God, where the hell are we? Like, I'm going to get kidnapped. This is all a fake. This is all, I'm dead. But no, when we got there, it was actually amazing. And they had this big TV with this big sort of presentation ready. And it was about 5 of us in there. It was like me, Baggins, one other, and a couple of plus ones. And I had no idea they were looking to do an ultimate, and I had no idea that they were changing a few other things, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But we didn't actually get a chance to follow any sort of quest line or ask too many questions around that. What essentially happened was, like most PTRs, you jump on the PTR, you get a bunch of boxes in your inventory, and I opened a couple, and bam, like all these heart gem runes appeared. And I was like, what the hell is this? And yeah, we managed to kind of pop them on and sort of play around with them. So I did actually honestly have a list of things that I wanted to check, such as what is this? Check the crafting tables, check this, see what's going on. Because once the sort of initial hype is over, people want to understand
The detail.
how things work. And I had really failed massively as a creator. Dude, I was just playing, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. So it just felt really good to use it, to see it. And
I think that's more important than the detail, because they're going to open it up on the PTR, and you're going to be able to go in, and everybody's going to be able to go in and kind of crowdsource. We're going to get notes kind of going over the detail. I honestly think like I would have done the same thing. Like it would have been all about the feeling of it, as opposed to like, you know, okay, this is how this unlocks, etc. Because all that will come when we get hands on, and in the content creator community, we'll start breaking it all down, you know. So it's like no, like I think it's more about like, did it feel good? Because if it's like if you went and you're like the ultimates, they feel like, you know, bunk, then it's like, oh, bummer, you know.
There was definitely
a huge cannon. I was like, oh my god,
that was wicked. That was wicked. There was definitely a few of them that felt like they're going to be more powerful than others. Like that was something that really felt true. And I also feel like you would be crafting these. I don't think you would get them as drops. That is just purely an opinion. I didn't check. I have no solid information behind that. But I feel like it's going to be a crafted item. Could be wrong on that, but
I'm fine with both. Like one of the things I always want to encourage is like, if they, let's say they ever add raids, you know, to the game, I hope that we already have a raid in the game. You know, we got the chest runs and Merc Guard and things like that. Yeah, I think that it's like if they add a instance raid, make sure there's also an open world raid that takes advantage of that same kind of tool set and content, right? Like I don't want the game to become an instant simulator. And so like when it comes to the rune stones, like, yeah, like don't leave crafters behind. Don't create systems that it's like, I don't know why you leveled your crafting. You know, it's like nobody, like only a handful of people felt like that was interesting. No. Like always drive as much value, especially into that economy, because the economy will then bring value to the content. All of a sudden you're like, oh man, I did this and I made all this money, and then I could go buy a legendary, or, oh, I got that legendary to drop. Like it gives me a player multiple pathways to kind of achieve my goals, right? As opposed to like the only way to get the best gear, the only way to get this rune is to go run the raid. And it's like, well, that might not work for my schedule, you know? And so then I find that it's like, well, I can go do that and I can go this other path. It might be longer, you know, it might take me more, you know, different avenues, but I'm chipping away at it, as opposed to like, well, I can't really get slotted into this, you know, predefined group, etc. So that's cool. So I was watching your video a couple times because I was trying to go through it. Like, is there a rune that gives you like an auto res, like a re-res kind of aspect? Because that's something I was like, as a healer, I would really appreciate.
No.
That's an idea for the Amazon devs that they're listening. Like, well, you know,
this system is something that they can start to expand on. You know, it's infinitely expandable. So there we go. Then the next rune coming in.
Exactly.
Rune.
That's what I thought. Like at first, I was like, this is an excellent starting point. Like all of a sudden, it's like and it adds a lot of build diversity. Already to the amount of options, because it's like, what do you want to choose? What rune and ultimate do you want to bring? And it's not always up. It's that ultimate. It ends up, I think, adding in a lot of characterization, and I think that means in the grand scheme of things, we can start to see new ideas brought in that don't break the overall game. It's like, oh, okay, we thought of this new cool ultimate ability. There's a new rune for it, right? Just like with the new gems that they're adding in a way to kind of help bolster that and kind of drive that, you know, that kind of grind. What's your favorite ultimate right now?
I mean, visually, the cannon, like, it's so cool. I mean, you just pull out a cannon out of nowhere, straight off a ship, boom, you blast a cannon. But I think, visually, the cannon is fantastic. I think the one where you fly up in the air, we've been memeing about it, really. You know, we haven't been able to swim, but we're now flying. All right, thanks. But I do genuinely think the roots are going to be very, very powerful from both a PvE and PvP standpoint. But they're all really cool, to be honest. They're very creative and good runes. But visually cannon is fantastic.
All right, so let's transition to the conversation about the greatsword. Obviously, they talked about stance dancing, it sounds like. At least that's what I gathered. Is it something where you literally are switching, like, I'm this tree, then I'm this tree? How does that work? How does that feel?
So as earlier, I just picked up the greatsword, looked at the tree. I was like, oh, just clicked everything on the left tree because it was red and offensive. So I just picked everything, and then when we started to get into a bit more detail, we started to figure out how it worked. My knowledge and my understanding is you could pick something from both the offensive and defensive tree, and your stance works off you sort of initiating an ability, using an ability. So when you use something from the defensive tree, you have X amount of time in this defensive stance, and vice versa when you go into the offensive. That's my understanding of how it works. I am very excited to get in and try it in a bit more detail and see if we can bounce off a defensive to an offensive stance and things like that. So that's my understanding. You don't kind of press a button and switch between the two. It kind of organically
because
works.
Then all of a sudden, like, then in my mind, that makes the greatsword the be all end all. Like, oh, you get 6 skills with this, be stancing, and etc. So being the ability that you fire off then would determine your stance actually is the most, I think, pretty logical outside of then adding in another button. I saw the ultimates. I'm like, as a controller player, I'm like, all right, I'm already trying to like brainstorm, like, where do I put that on the controller guide, etc. And I'm hoping still for native controller support, but I know that they keep adding in all these extra buttons. I'm like, all right, I gotta get creative. Gotta get my all right, guys. Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted. Okay, but how does it feel then compared to the weapons that we currently have? It's a two-handed weapon, correct? So, like in my mind, I think spear, great axe, warhammer. How would it rate to you in terms of like those other weapons? Where do you feel it falls?
It's such a difficult one because I've had conversations with a lot of people lately, and people are saying they're going to use it as a tank weapon. They're going to pair it with a sword and shield and have it as a really sort of heavy defensive build. Some people are saying they're going to run it with a bow. I'm like, what? Okay, cool, like that. Other people are saying they're going to use it with a great axe, great sword, warhammer, great sword. So pretty much anything that runs with dex from a DPS point of view is going to be very, very powerful. Dex and strength, should I say. So anything that is a primary strength or primary dex weapon will really pair well with the greatsword.
Is this a primary dex then strength, or you said do they scale evenly? Like, is that how does that break the game?
So my brain doesn't really compute, but it scales evenly. Apparently it's 50 between strength and dex. So
that would be the first weapon that actually does that, because it's traditionally on a 2-stat weapon you get like a 0.9 for the main stat and you get 0.65 for the secondary stat, as opposed to kind of like a 1-to-1 for like a single statted weapon. So this would be like literally like, it doesn't matter. It's like you can go full dex build, if necessary. Is that the idea that you're getting?
Yeah, that's the idea, and I also feel like it's definitely sort of a risk versus reward. It's a high reward and a high risk weapon. So, I saw at one point we had a base damage. When you set all your stats on the right hand side, the base damage was like 1700. This was on Scythe when he was running light, but I dueled him as a heavy, and I had nowhere near that, and I basically one-shot him because he had unloaded some skills, because he then was in this stance where he can take more damage. He had a hell of a lot more to give, but because he was able to take more damage, he was just gone. So it's definitely a high risk, high reward weapon, and I've not really seen that yet. So yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how this unfolds. But yeah, scales evenly. You can do a lot of damage, and you can also take a lot of damage with this weapon. So I'm really, really excited to see how people kind of put this out to the field.
How does it feel to swing in terms of like its like attack speed versus something like just a normal longsword, or even the other two-handed weapons? Like, does it feel like it's got a long, attack? Are you opening yourself up to a lot of different attacks while you're trying to do your base attack, or is it actually relatively fast in comparison?
The best way for me to explain it is like it feels like it's meant to be there. It feels like it's meant to be in the game. It feels like it's going to fit very well with everything else. So I play Warhammer Blunderbuss at the moment, but in a small scale environment, the Warhammer's it's so slow that everyone can read every ability that you do. I feel like the greatsword is going to be kind of in between that. So I think it's fast enough that you'll be able to do some good small scale fights and sort of use a kind of skill based type weapon, but also if you use the heavy attacks, it can take a long time. It's a lot of damage output. There is obviously something on the tree that allows you to do a heavy attack the same time you do a light attack, which is kind of, it feels a little bit crazy, but again, you are able to take more damage when you start to do these things. So it's definitely going to be an interesting weapon. But yeah, it feels good. It feels like you're not going to be people will not going to just completely walk out of all your attacks. It's fast enough that you can hit, but also, if someone's pretty skilled, they can block this, they can counter you, for example. I feel like it's going to fit in nicely.
So in terms of that, then we've seen them, or at least as a part of like earlier leaks about having daggers, right? And so essentially kind of the assumption was like, okay, we got the Void Gauntlet, okay, we got Blunderbuss, daggers, maybe Great Sword, because we hadn't seen that yet. Did they prioritize the Great Sword because of Asmongold?
I don't think so. There was no confirmation of that, but no, I genuinely think the Great Sword was sort of really up there on everyone's list, obviously including Asmongold, I'm sure, but I haven't heard any news about anything else yet. I think the last dev video we had was the daggers were on the table. There was a discussion around potentially wielding something else with the shield as well, and there was lots of discussions and lots of things on the table, but Greatsword was the one that was high up on there, and I haven't heard anything else actually. No news of any other weapons yet. So
yeah, I think that's going to be what's really exciting to see, kind of what they bring out, because there's a lot of still opportunity for new weapons that can kind of bring in different kind of play styles. Like after they did music, a part of me was like, man, I wish we had like a support style weapon. And I still want like a lightning staff or something like that to kind of pair, as an elemental, style magic. And then I think for me, like outside of like daggers and obviously lightning magic, like I'd like to see them split the shield off a sword and allow shield to be its own like tree. And then you could pair that with the hatchet or pair it with, like a single-handed weapon or something like that. And even the daggers, like I wonder if it's like when they were started, because they said they were going to look into it, and I was like, well, we haven't heard about it. I don't think it's going to be a quick fix, meaning I wouldn't expect it this year. But it's like that would be something really thrilling, because then it opens up, I think, more tanking options. But obviously, like you said, the Greatsword can be paired and brought in as maybe even a tanking thing with its defensive tree. I think that'd be really cool. I see Chad actually talking about even pistols.
I see.
So man, I like there's already like weapons kind of in the game that we've seen enemies have. Like that's why lightning for me. I was like, we know there's lightning magic. We just can't wield it. And that's just something I'd like. I want to talk. Did you get to experience any of the new starting game? I know you got to did you run into any of the like Everfall and because we both saw it from the video, but did you get to go run around those cities?
We were asked politely not to visit them and not to capture them, so I was like, is anyone looking? Maybe I can sneak down there, but no, I fully respected their wishes to not go down there, so we didn't get a chance to see them firsthand, and I think potentially it's like a work in progress. So maybe we saw sort of the front. Sometimes when they're doing buildings, they put a nice picture up at the front, and because the work's still happening in the background, I think it's a bit of that. I think while we were here, that is. The final touches are sort of being placed with the town. So I didn't get a chance to experience them firsthand, which I'm kind of gutted about. But we started to compare the two different maps. So obviously we got a chance to see the map in game, also on the event, and then the map now. And we're starting to like pinpoint where all these places are going to be and what's changing and things like that. So that was really exciting, actually.
So how much time do you actually get to spend walking around the new zone?
About an hour and a half.
So what did you all experience? Like you went to it looks like a city. Like it looks like,
oh, that was amazing. Yeah.
A lot of I've seen a lot of chat in game, even before this event and even like online, where people are like, oh man, like we want to see like a city, not like these kind of settlements, but like a thriving city with all kinds of things. Is that the vibe that you get when walking through? And how long did it take you to get from one point to the other in the city?
So the city felt like twice or three times as big as all the current towns that we've got. I felt like it was a ghost town though. I felt like
how many creators were there? Like
Yeah,
three,
no,
four?
sorry. I mean, in terms of like, I feel like they missed out on so much opportunity to kind of make the town like lively through like an NPC standpoint. So, I went to I found these Roman baths, and there was like 2 NPCs in there. It could be kind of cool if you had, some NPCs in there and you just hear some sort of chatter and, kind of bring the city to life. It really felt like there was this insanely epic, Roman city that no one's living there. And I know it needs to be populated by players, but I really think that they missed out on some sort of finer details where they could bring some life to the towns, maybe some music near the tavern, or whatever it may be, just something that brings life to the town. So the town was huge. It just felt a little bit like yeah, there's something was missing from it, but it was beautiful. It really was amazing.
Did they start you off in the town, or did
Yeah.
you have to run to it?
No, we started off sort of in the end, like the main entrance to the town, where you kind of look over sort of like a plaza, I guess, where all the crafting stations and stuff are.
Okay, and then so you explored the town. How did you get to see how much of the zone overall did you get to go run around and explore?
I can see Scythe in chat. So between us, we pretty much experienced all of it. There was sort of a challenge. Dave said this zone is big. You're not going to get a chance to see it all. And we're like, okay, challenge accepted. Let's go.
You got it.
We didn't get to see it all, but we got a real vibe of pretty much everywhere. I managed to get into like one of the elite zones where we saw this truly epic sort of glowing fiery Roman boss that it just absolutely kicked my butt and threw me straight out of this zone. I was like, okay, man, I'm leaving. I'm sorry. Some sort of like the swampy acidy type area, which was super cool. We obviously got a chance to go home with Baggins to the Expedition 2, and we just sort of run around and checked out all the zones. And it was very well made in terms of design wise. It was beautiful. Mobs were really nice.
Does it feel populated? Because like in terms of the current zones, I always felt like the zones themselves felt very lively, very active, whether I was just doing solo content or like, obviously you're not seeing other players run around, but the concern is that you made the zone 3 times bigger, but that just means you spread out the volume. And so it ends up having bigger gaps of empty space. Does it feel, like tight? Does it feel like there's a lot going on, or did it just feel like it's bigger, but that means that instead of having these things together, that they're just spread out a little bit?
Yeah, I think whoever come up with the idea of turning it into a desert knew what he was doing or what she was doing, because there's not much in the desert. So they just made it bigger. And no, there was parts of, there was definitely parts of it that made you feel like you're in a desert. There was nothing really. And it felt very barren, and it felt very, very desert-like, to be honest. And that was kind of what I wanted to see. And then there was moments where you would go into a little oasis or something, but oh wow, there's lots of life in here. There's some water, there's palm trees, cacti and things like that. And that was really nice and really exciting. And there was some kind of cool details. When you cut down a cactus, you got like 1 bucket of water mixed with the cactus tree, and like little details like that were really cool. But it definitely felt very barren across most of it until you got to kind of these POIs. And when you got to the POIs, there was lots of mobs there and things happening.
In terms of gathering, because like obviously you cut down a cactus tree, did you see if there was any like new resources that were coming out of the desert? That's one of the things we've often like wondered is like, will we see glass make its way out of like the desert for some reason, or things like that? What did you think?
Yeah, we were looking earlier. Now I was just, while you're talking, I was like, please remember what they were. I can't remember off the top of my head what we saw, but just watching back through the footage today, I think I saw maybe 7, 8, 9 new materials, raw materials, new foods, poison sacs from the scorpions. Yeah. And there was sort of I can't remember what it's called, but essentially like the hard shell from the scorpion was another resource. So there is new resources here, which is great, because a couple of people made some comments like, why should I go to Brimstone and just do nothing and just explore? And they're actually putting in resources which are unique to that zone, which I think is really cool. So hopefully people will have to go there if they want to get a particular item, which is really cool.
So in terms of, I guess, level 60 and end game, obviously you're not like progressing on your character. Has there been any talks? Because like one of the things I noticed, obviously the enemies are all like this is a level 60 zone.
Yeah.
This is like you getting the cap, but one of the things I really have been missing is any kind of post progression that's beyond like the expertise. I've been wanting just XP to actually mean anything. Were
Yeah.
you getting any XP rewards? Was there any talk about, hey, we're looking at revamping kind of this post game progression system at all?
Honestly, no. That there was nothing really around that. I think the vibes that I got was they're really focusing on, making sure that the expeditions are really good. It sounds like there's a discussion around OPR to make sure that OPR works really well. Obviously, arenas, they're just tying up and trying to make sure that these sort of in the modes that we can go into actually really work the way they're intended to work.
Okay.
There was no sort of I would really like to see it happen, same as sort of what you suggested there. You don't have to stop at 60. Once you reach 61, like, or a fake 61, you get 100 umbral shards or whatever it may be. Just something.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I honestly would say it doesn't even need to be the most efficient. It could be the slowest form of end game progression. But like, all right, I'm just out here killing things. I'm out here running these dungeons. Like, even if these enemies aren't dropping massive amounts of experience, like I look at the experience boosters that are part of the faction zone. And I'm like, oh, those would actually be valuable if you didn't have this level cap at 60. And they added it for crafting and gathering. And I'm just like, oh man, I want it for weapons and I want it for just base level post progression.
Yeah.
Just give me this static little like, chipping away, man. And that's just something I continue. Like, I'm sure they're going to get annoyed by my feedback because that's my constant feedback on that. Besides native controller support, it
really makes sense though. It really does make sense, and it's just like you say, it's something that doesn't have to mean anything at all. But once you start to see this little XP bar go up constantly, it's just that form of actual progression constantly with your character, and maybe you get a small reward at the end or something, anything, and that's a big thing, for people. So I'd like to see that.
They have these little coffers, like they already have, I think, a lot of the base stuff of like, oh, here's this treasure coffer of random rewards. Like it doesn't have to be like this big fanfare, it just is like, thanks. Yeah. You want to go, continue to fish. And now you're like, you hit fake 61 or like, like 60 plus one or whatever they want to detail it out. I think that'd be really, really thrilling. So you got to go hands on with the new expedition. Obviously you said you didn't clear it because you guys were going in as a 3-man with the content itself. But was that because there was nobody else on the server to play with you guys, or was it just the 3 of you jumping into it?
So the room was where the event was. The room was kind of set up. There was like a couple of computers here, and there was sort of, it reminded me of like an old rum or an old wine cellar, like really, really cool and a really great environment. But there's sort of like little areas, and there was 4 computers set up at the back. So that's where me, Baggins, and Scythe ended up basically going and hanging out. So we spoke to us 3 more than, I think there was 3 other people playing at the same time, but they were sort of a little bit away. And everyone was kind of capturing their own content and just doing their own thing. But because we were all there, we were all shouting at each other and, being gamers basically and having a good time. And we said, let's go on the expedition. And we just got us 3 together to go in. And we sort of did that. Basically, the way it works, we kind of all jumped in. We just did our own thing for a little bit. I had a couple of duels with Scythe. And then we got a chance to interview David as well. So Baggins went first and I went after. And then we kind of had like our final time to just chill after lunch and play the game. So we said, hey, let's just play the expedition. So I think we might have been able to get through it, but it was actually quite big and there was lots to do, and we just ran out of time. They needed to pack up and people were going home and lives and stuff, so we just ran out of time essentially on the event to get through even further.
Out of the current pool of level 60 expeditions, like what is your top 3?
Top expedition I think will be Barnacles and Black Powder.
Yeah,
not just because it's piratey.
I was like, all right, come on.
I think there's quite a bit of copy and paste in there, and that kind of let me down a bit. But the big pirate boss, friggin' awesome! Like it's really cool, and we haven't seen those mechanics anywhere else really in the game. So for me, it was really nice and new and fresh when it got to there. And the final boss, man, she's savage. I was in there for 2.5 hours a couple of days ago. People were just laughing at me all day, but that was great fun. It's sort of new. Then it'll probably be Tempest. I think Tempest is a really nice visual dungeon as well. And then just for the sheer farmability, it would be Genesis. So they're my top 3 expeditions, really. I like them. I think they're cool.
When did you get to see any kind of new mechanics that were a part of the Brimstone expedition?
Yeah, there's sort of like same but different, if that makes sense. So lots of similarities from what we've seen before, but different. So one of the brand new mechanics was there was essentially like a sentry or a patrol. There was like a diamond or like a 3 diamond type shape floaty thing.
Yeah, I saw that like in your video, kind of like these little floating gems.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is, but floaty gem things. And if you go within their circle on their patrol, you just get laser beamed, and it does quite a bit of damage. I was like, oh, geez. So that was quite cool. And then there seems to be a lot of lasers. There was a big laser beam coming from a Cyclops guy in one of the elite zones. And then when we were fighting this beetle scarab boss, again, he sort of started firing laser beams at us and lifting up things that were shooting laser beams at us. There's lots of lasers in Brimstone at the moment. I don't know where it all came from, but yeah, there was definitely some new mechanics and a couple of the other bosses as well. They just hit really hard, and some new stars. I wasn't sort of blown away. There wasn't like groundbreaking, brand new mechanics in there. It's like things that we've seen elsewhere, just applied here on slightly different vibes. But yeah, it felt good, and it felt really new, and it felt like, I genuinely had a good time running through this dungeon. I think that's what I took away from it. This felt new, it felt fresh, there was new things happening, and that for me was just like, okay, this is what I wanted. I wanted to feel like this is new, and it did feel like that.
So with that essentially, when this gets released, we will have Genesis, Laz, Tempest, and Barnacles as level 60, and then we'll have the Nadine, or I don't know how it's pronounced. So that would be 5 level 60s, and then we have the Depths as a mutated, and we have Dynasty as mutated, so giving us current 7 level 60 endgame dungeons. Have they talked about like is there any going to be? Are we going to see Starstone? Are we going to see Amarine like mutated at any point here this fall?
I actually didn't question around Amarine and Starstone getting sort of mutated, but I think I remember hearing something early on that they wanted to mutate all of the expeditions. They weren't going to sort of leave them behind because it's essentially repeatable content. And Amarine, it's Amarine, you sometimes see someone in chat like, can someone help me with Amarine? And it's like, someone will be there, we'll have a go. But it'll be really nice to see Amarine mutated again, because when the group finder came out, I ran Starstone with a group of low levels, and it was really fun. Like, genuinely was fun going back to something you haven't done in a while.
So great. These dungeons are beautiful. Oh, excuse me, expeditions.
I think they will. I do think they will mutate them at some point. I don't know if it's coming anytime right now, like soon in this
I was
update,
trying to think when they added Depths, because it was like, is that something where like all of a sudden they cycle those in as a part of the process? But I was like, I don't know. Either way, like I think it's Starstone and Amarine are the ones that are the last remaining ones that haven't been. So it's not.
Yeah, maybe on like a quiet month or a quiet content month when they're bug fixing or whatever, they'll be like, just mutate Amarine. That's fun. There's content there.
There you go, content, guys. Go run that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's kind of one of the things that I'm excited to see. I'm glad they already have that system, but it does, present challenge. The Group Finder obviously being a really great addition to the game, and they already talked about version 1.1 and version 2.0. Did y'all see the Group Finder? Like, were you using 1.1 in this build that you were using, or?
We sort of we were all kind of sat next to one another, and we're all in a party, so we just blasted in there. We didn't check things, but I'm glad to hear that the Group Finder's getting a look into, because at least on my server, not many people use it, because it's quite it's a bit of a pain in the bum. If you go to a mutated dungeon, a mutated expedition, to find a group in group 8, you actually physically have to go and click on mutation 8 to then see the groups within 8 back to 3, and that's kind of a pain. I think like if it was a big screen that showed there's a mutation 2 here, there's a mutation 6 here, there's a mutation 8, and then there's 5 mutation 10s, you can actually go and do the mutation 8 even if you are an M10 ready player, and I think that's really important that they have some sort of visibility across all groups. So hopefully they include that in the next group finder.
Yeah, I think it sounds like that is the next update, and then they have
Wicked.
version 2.0 what they were working towards, which would list other things besides expeditions, which I think would be great. Like listing for arenas or OPR. My suggestion was also like, let me list for just open world stuff. Like, hey, we're gonna go do portal farms. Hey, we're gonna go do the Merkguard raid. Hey, we're gonna go just level up this. Like, just join in. Let's go. And we'll have some fun. Like, and then also let me put a password on the group finder as well, search, etc. Like, there's a lot of potential in that tool, and I'm so glad they didn't go with matchmaking. And a lot of people I know, they're like, "Oh, I want matchmaking." It's like, you think you do, but there's a cost to it. Like, as long as everybody's okay with the cost of matchmaking, then it's a fine system. But when you look at PvE content, it's like, oh yeah, if we're going to have matchmaking, it either means that we're going to have the most toxic matchmaking possible, or we're going to have to dumb down the content so that anybody who just gets matched in can clear it. Oh, you brought a fishing pole and nothing else? Good. We're ready to rock and roll. You fish that boss and we'll burn him down. It's like, and then the complaint becomes like, oh, the game's so linear and so boring and so dull. They're not doing anything interesting. Well, they can't, because like, they have, nobody wants that, like they think they do, but it's the old adage, like, but they really just want an easy win and to go about their day. Like, and then that drives more that chore mentality. New World feels so relaxing to me all the time, meaning when I log in, I don't log in with this, like, oh, I got to do this. 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 Oh, and then I can have fun. And by the time you do all your chores, you're tired. I log into New World. I go, oh, what am I going to do today? And then I go in and just like, go in a direction, and then it ends up evolving. And it always ends up being this very organic experience, depending on who's online and how we call it. And group finders only made that even more valuable to us. We ran Genesis this last week, and we're like, yo, cool. We got 4 of us. Group finder, boom, got a guy, and we're ready to rock and roll. It was so nice. It was so convenient. And I was like, all right, yeah, but I agree with you. They need to list that and show that. Now, we got a question from chat. Doovies is asking, the new gems, are they some sort of new progression system? Nervous face.
We've discussed this a lot, and we've sort of looked into the details. So similar to the Greatsword, when we saw some footage of Greatsword, there was like a clip where they did 30k damage, and everyone was like, oh my god, this is ridiculous, this can't happen. And I think that was an early version of what we saw with the Greatsword. I'm somewhat confused about the new gem system, because if you start to look into the details of what it can do, each gem can add like 50% additional damage to like a ranged attack, for example. And if you put this across all of your gear and your gems, that adds up to 500% extra damage. And it's like, oh, okay, that seems a little bit wild. So I think they maybe need a bit of fine tuning, or they're going to change things, or maybe you could only have one of, I think they're called Rune Glass, one of these new Rune Glass gems at one particular time. So I think it's yeah, so I'm saying it thinks it's potentially just a tooltip error. So definitely nervous that if that is the case, that's going to be worrying. But yeah, the new gems are essentially new progression and a way to go horizontal again in terms of diversity of builds and what we're going to start to see. So yeah, in essence, in my opinion, yes, it is a new sort of it is a new progression system, and it's a new sort of diversity system in terms of like builds and stuff like that.
Soul Angel says, not trying to be a negative Nancy, but in my opinion, the numbers look like New World is practically dead. They're under 2,000 players on Steam, and they just did another server combine. Just to kind of throw facts at you, they have over 200,000 monthly active users just based off of concurrency numbers. Right now there's 17,000 people playing. The peak that we've seen is at 26,000. Like, those are good numbers. Like, it's still within the top 50 games played on Steam, generally in the 30s, overall. So they did some server combines. Actually, that's one of the problems that we have, and this will be a good way to kind of end the podcast. They actually have queue times on all the servers. Like, I tried to log in last night. Usually I end up waiting about 10-15 minutes to actually get in and play. Some people are having longer queues. I know South America is struggling because they're just down to one. Like, they have just one server, and it's like if this game, especially the Brimstone Sands updates and the hype and I'm betting we're going to see marketing behind the Brimstone Sands, or some kind of push sometime in late September or October or around this, especially if it's stable. That's going to drive a lot of people back in here. I think the problem is that they're going to have to create new servers, and then the fear is like, do we end up seeing this cycle over again where too many people are playing it? Because right now, the complaint that I hear from a majority of people is like, oh, I'd like to play, but like I don't want to wait in a 30-minute queue. And we've seen long queue times for this game before, and I think they're kind of setting themselves back up for that. Is that a concern that you have?
We had a discussion around servers when I'm out of them, and there's been multiple times where I do think that they've kind of not failed, but they could have done a lot better with the servers. So I'm definitely nervous. I think, like you said there, we saw a peak of 25k concurrent. I know that's not our statistic that we want to really go by, but people go by.
Concurrent is people. That's what the general population uses. What I think is the better value is who's returning and who's new. And we're seeing tons of returning players and tons of new players.
My stream is filled with, Dan, I'm coming back to the game. What do I do? What do I do?
I'm back. What do I do?
Yeah. There's so much stuff and there's so much changes. Oh, this has changed, that's changed. So people are really returning to the game, and it's, if it can hold steady at a concurrent of 20 to 25k, then you're looking at good numbers on your servers. The game could survive on one server if the server's full. Man, you got a good 2,500 people there that you can enjoy the game with. So I think they need to look at the servers and make sure that when they push Brimstone out, that they are ready to kind of expand and be ready for this, because I think that's going to be
a lot of people say they want to come back for a new fresh server, like where it's like, hey, we want to have that new land rush again, and I think that could actually be something that's a part of announcement. Hey guys, new server as a part of that experience, the new player experience, et cetera. I think that's going to add a lot of value to it. But anybody who says the game is dead, like, I would highly question their understanding of how MMOs function. And that's not me trying to be rude and dunk on anybody. It's just that, like, how people perceive the MMO isn't how it's actually like managed and functioning. So the one of the things that's actually a real good sign of health is if you look at this the summer medley fair, the peak players, like, they're hitting real close. They haven't really had a massive drop off, as opposed to like where typically you see people jump in with an update and like, hey, let's see what's going on with it. Like, overall, like every weekend, it's in that 2,500, 2,600, which was the hype of the update itself. So that actually is a real good sign of health, that people are sticking around. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing lots of returning players, lots of new players, people asking, hey, should I come back? And these are the right questions that you want within any health of an MMO. The question, though, like that, what Soul Angel is really getting at, though, is like, is it worth it, or is there still a risk? Is there still a risk in your mind of New World and its future? Because we know that Scott's already got something in the holster, ready to kind of like spring on us. Like, if somebody was and has already played the game, what would be the two things you would tell them that you feel like would get them to update and jump back in?
I'd say you'd be a fool if you didn't give it another try.
Fool!
You're a fool. No, I tell everybody, probably about 2-3 weeks ago, I was telling people, don't even download it yet. Just wait. Just wait. If you quit the game in the first 2 months, just wait. You clearly need something big to kind of change your mind. Monarchs, Everfall is really going to do that for people, especially the starting zones. That is going to be a big game changer. If someone hasn't played the game, if they quit the game 2 months into release, delete your character, start fresh, and just play the game from a brand new experience, because so much has genuinely changed for these players from what they would have experienced back in the day. And I really think that with a big update like this, what you said, and I think a lot of people are suggesting it as well, having a new server where you cannot transfer to it, you can only create new characters on it, will really enhance. It really enhanced their experience as well, because some of the best times I had in the game was, running down a road and people ambushing me, or people laying in dead alligators and ambushing me, and all these kind of crazy things were happening that only happens when there's a lot of players around. So I think give the game a try now, ready for the Brimstone, because there's a lot of new changes that would probably help you as a player both casually and sort of, a little bit more competitively to understand now before all of this new stuff comes out as well.
Yeah. Now, in terms of like Souls Angel here, honestly asking the right questions. Now, I actually posted a video going over all the things that have changed, but to your just what I say is come join us on Friday nights. We're playing together. We're hanging out in Discord. But yeah, they got rid of keys for dungeons. In fact, you can actually have a group finder in which that you can easily get access to the content and do the content. They've added in so much nice quality of life in terms of inventory, in terms of travel. People advocate for mounts, and I haven't yet seen a need for a mount because fast travel is so convenient that it ends up, I think mounts, I'm not fighting against the idea, but I'm just yeah, as the world grows, then I could see that becoming more and more value. Brimstone Sands, being that you've got probably a larger set of, if nothing's happening, then yeah, I'd like to maybe cross that a little bit faster. At least, and they've already made it faster where you run on roads naturally. So you run faster on roads. There is just this, sense of traversal and things that they've improved that has been, I think, massively helpful for the game. Lots of friction has been removed, lots of quality of life. And then they're adding content. The content in my mind is king. Yeah. So whenever anybody says that they come back, it's when how long has it been since you played? If you quit in July, yeah, maybe wait till October, wait till that content drops. So you're not sitting here, burning yourself out. I'm at 6, I'm at the highest gear. I got the best BIS of all the cool stuff that I like. Well, yeah, maybe take a break. But if you haven't played since March, now's the perfect time to start. In fact, Summer Medley Fair is still going on at the time of this recording. And if you are level 20, I would be I have a hard time deleting a character, but if you got level 20, you can take part. You can start playing the musical instruments. You can really get into these new systems that they've added, and they're wild. It feels like the devs are having fun. That's my pitch whenever it's I feel like the dev that they're talking to us, they're listening to us, and they're having fun, and they're bringing in cool ideas to the game itself. So I'm generally excited every month to hear from them, to see what are they thinking next, because there is so much potential. There's so many things that they could bring in, that they could do, that has me excited. And it feels like it's a really good, respectful blend of what made MMOs great in my mind, like Final Fantasy 11. I saw Pulp here talking about that a second ago, but also even the new school where it's okay, yeah, we get it. You got jobs. You not everybody's a streamer. Not everybody can play this game all the time. We understand that. We want to respect both. So it does feel like there's a real strong community within the game that's still sticking around, and the numbers going green are always a good sign. I do think we'll see a dip, in September. I do think we might see a dip, after Brimstone, because it's, we got to know what's next. But Danny, where can people find you? Why don't you plug anything you got for them, and then we'll release you back out into the wild.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Find me on Twitch. Twitch is the main place. So just type in Danneh or Danneh TV, and you'll find me. I'm pretty much live every day, 9 a.m. UK time, most of the day. So I'm pretty much live every day. Yeah, I'm there.
Oh, I'm always enjoying lurking. So
I appreciate
me making time, and I'm so excited that you got to go hands on with it. And I can't wait until we can be testing out the PTR. Last time you and I met in the PTR, you kicked my ass. We got into a 3v3 arena randomly, and I'm I just got murdered by Danneh. This is great.
We must meet again. The PTR actually is something. I've got some really cool friends in NA, and I really hope that we can all kind of get together again on the PTR and just meet up. And it's a really cool place. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you in there, and get some payback, kick my ass.
Oh, maybe we'll see. We'll see if my great sword skills can bring it. We'll see. Anyway, Danny, thanks so much for joining me, guys. This has been another episode of the Epic Loot Radio podcast. Thanks so much for all y'all who tuned in live. Be sure to leave us a rating over on all the podcast places where podcasts are found. That's a great way of helping us out. And until next time, guys, we will hopefully wish you all the best, and we'll see you soon. Take care. And there it is. Awesome. Cool. All right, chat. I'm going to hit end broadcast. Thanks so much for being a part of this. You guys, also, if you have questions, etc., you can always ask in comments. Hit us up on Discord. Friday nights at the Central Time Zone around 4-ish. We kick it off, and I play New World until I'm tired. So if you guys have any, if you're looking for people to play with, you don't even have to be on the server. We're literally just a bunch of people come, it's a lot of fun, and if you don't feel like talking, that's fine too. We're just getting goals in. Anyway, I'm ending broadcast.